So that concludes our questions from the chamber. We're going to open it up to the floor. If you have a question that you'd like to direct, if you want to just make your way up to the podium here, and we'll take your questions to the candidates. Before we do that, I just want to reiterate what we had spoken about before, and that is that the members of the public are encouraged to ask questions and should feel safe and supported when doing so. Questions need to be clear and to the point. This is not a place for stating your opinions or making lengthy statements. Please indicate whether your question is for a particular candidate or for the whole panel. So who wants to be first up to the mic? And come on guys, I told these guys that Fernie has lots of questions, so let's get up there. Penelope, good girl.
My question is to everyone except for Rick. You can set this one out. It's regarding climate change. What I haven't heard yet in any conversation is what your party wants to do in regards to adaptations.
So let's start with Abra, if you want to answer that question.
Policy adaptations, what the province is going to do to work with the changes that we're already seeing, the fires, the floods, etc.
Climate change is the result of complex systems that are going sideways, and so there is also no easy answer. It's going to be a whole host of different things that we need to do. And actually one of the things that I've been most inspired by, other than the youth striking every Friday, is Paul Hawkins and the group that is working on Drawdown, because they have identified the 100 most impactful mechanisms, action plans that we can put in place to actually reduce the greenhouse gas emissions to levels where we can continue to have a livable planet. So amongst the various things that the Green Party is going to do to try and mitigate what is already impacting us is to do critical things like restore carbon sinks. We know that our forests are a vital part of our carbon sinks, and yet what's happening is that the seedlings that are being planted are not really they're not doing well. They need 3 good years in order to really take root and begin to grow, and we're not achieving that. So we're going to have to be super careful with regards to replanting our forests, and also be more cautious about what we take out, how we take it out, and getting most value out of those. I think we work with large industries like tech that has a clear climate action strategy themselves with some admirable reductions emissions. We basically have to prioritize adaptation. We know that across many sectors they could be doing better, and so we'll be working with them all and adapting regulation as necessary. Thank you very much.
Just with, can I ask for clarification? By adaptations, are you asking like, okay, we've got changing climate here, what are we going to do here, or do you mind?
So for instance, like food security, right? What
okay,
are we going to
agriculture, and the effects that it's having right here now.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. That's an excellent question, and I think it's on the minds of anybody who is seriously looking at the science that already exists. Is very, very clear out there. I know locally we're looking at fires and floods. I mean, we've had evacuation notices, we've had mudslides, we've got a lot of this stuff going on, and we've been talking about a lot of it. Now, there are a lot of national programs in place to help industries green, to look at agriculture, and in fact, some of the agriculture in our region, one of the problems we have is with sustainability. We've filled up our 3rd largest agricultural valley with water for the Columbia River Treaty. But that's a totally different issue. I think we got to be looking at ways that we've got to be protecting our communities and enhancing these. And I know we have a number of initiatives. For example, the Nature Legacy is one that the Liberal Party has. There's the clean technology funding. But we're talking really creatively too. We're talking about water cannons. We're talking about, you know, helping people, so we're getting the fire zones around and working on things like that. Now, a lot of that is regional and municipal and provincial, and this is why collaboration is so important, because the federal government has dollars. We just need to be working with the regional districts and with the municipalities, particularly to address the imminent dangers, as well as we also need to be putting some really serious money and science and thought into how we're going to address future things like agriculture and sustainability that way. So thank you.
Thank you. The 35% carbon reduction in 1,000 years promised by other parties doesn't take into account ecological tipping points. When it starts getting hotter, this is likely to cause a chain reaction. Animal agriculture is responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than the combined exhaust from all worldwide transportation. The climate strike in Nelson was a lot of things. It demonstrated the power we have in numbers. In coordination with the RCMP, it showed how to work with authority in democratic ways to begin to get messages out that are currently being underrepresented. The idea is that we need change, not what the 4 other parties are offering. Platitudes wrapping up the message, everything is going to be okay, because it isn't, unless we alter the way the world is working right now. The Animal Protection Party of Canada will strengthen the organization Environment and Climate Change Canada, both legislatively and financially, to review environmental issues and rapidly address them based on best available science and best practices. We need to impose charges on nations or on non-essential goods from nations with carbon pricing measures less aggressive than ones that will implement, and we need to use these funds and current subsidies to destructive industries in the development and adoption of alternative energy implemented with community collaboration. Changes the Animal Protection Party are suggesting are not small ones. What they are surmountable. With ideas and help, anyone is going to be able to start making real steps towards having a genuine impact, which is the least we owe to this planet, to future generations, ultimately to ourselves. Thank you.
Well, one thing that's missing for sure is accountability. So we'll get a panel of scientists who are independent. They're going to tell us and guide us as to what is going wrong, and then they're going to develop plans for us to move forward. Yeah, we hear a lot of talk that the scientists have already said they are agreeing or not agreeing that we have climate change. So now let's get those smart people to say to us, here's what we have to do. And that's where we build relationships with the provincial government, municipal governments, regional districts, so that we do move forward with a solid plan with some actual action, not just talking about it. That's what the Conservative government will do. Thank you.
I talked earlier about the need to reduce our greenhouse gases and how we were going to do that. And that's, of course, by making our homes more energy efficient, providing funding for that, by moving to green energy. Geothermal is #1 for this part of the province, by the way, in the world. And solar energy, along with some wind, although I'm not that fond of the forests of wind towers as I drive to Lethbridge. And moving towards electric vehicles, including providing more funding incentives for both vehicles and for electric bikes. I think they should have a grant for electric bicycles as well. In terms of our communities, we need to make sure that we are fireproofing our communities, and in places like right here in Fernie, making sure that we're relatively flood-proofed. And again, the federal government is and should be providing funding to do both of those to make sure that our communities are safe. In terms of agriculture, agriculture is one of my priorities. I used to live in Saskatchewan and Manitoba and down on the coast. And I put a bill forward, Bill C-281, to celebrate the Friday before Thanksgiving. Every year is National Local Food Day. Food security and local food go hand in hand, so we need to be putting a real emphasis on growing our food locally. That bill made it through the House of Commons with 100% of every member of Parliament voting in favor of my bill at all 3 stages. Almost never happens because it was a private member's bill. It was killed in the Senate by Conservative senators. So we won't be celebrating, coming up very shortly, the Friday before Thanksgiving is National Local Food Day. But we need to focus on food security. We need to be growing more of our own food locally. And I do think all levels of government have a role in doing that. Carbon carbon, just quickly, we've had a carbon tax in place in BC since 2008, and our economy has often led the country. You can have a carbon tax and a good economy.
You were asked to sit out, but you know what? I'm going to allow you 1 minute to rebuttal the question.
Thank you. There's a value here in Canada. You'll find it in Section 2 of our Constitution under our rights and freedoms. And it's called the freedom of expression, belief, thought, and opinion, and religion. So to be excluded from answering a question is actually a form of censorship. And that's something that I'll fight to ensure that none of you ever have to endure. You'll always have those rights. I just want to say that I respect the question and your opinion, and I'll clarify our position just really brief. We don't disbelieve in climate change. We actually believe that it exists. I mean, it's obvious from the geology and the records that we have. Nature is always changing, slowly, over long periods of time. We don't understand all the reasons, but it's an accepted fact. But short-term emergency right now in the climate, we don't believe CO2 is responsible for that, nor do we believe that there is an emergency. And we're going to fund really good research into the whole issue to clarify exactly what is going on before we rush off and jeopardize our economy. Thank you.